Dr. Z, that Tarot Teddy Bear, the beautiful king at your service. I hope this week has been progressing well for you. Earlier this week, I decided to inquire about geopolitical things, specifically what's going on with the United States and Iran, and if in fact the United States will engage in actions towards the nation of Iran. I looked earlier this week and I did inquire, but I put it to the side. Then I decided to come back later just to check again to see if the cards that I did pull were giving the same energy as I did earlier this week. And I'm getting the same energy, so I'll just go ahead and give you what I came up with. So it looks like the United States will, in fact, engage in hostile actions towards Iran, maybe this week or this weekend. I asked in terms of the peace agreement or the negotiations whether there will be progress in terms of the negotiation between Iran and the United States concerning the issues that they have. And this would be specifically the nuclear energy, the nuclear issue. And I gather this may also have something to do with their ballistic missiles, what have you. Whatever the terms of those conversations, I'm seeing that there is a definite impasse, and there is there is no alignment when it comes to the issues. First card that I pulled was the Three of Swords. And so typically when we see the Three of Swords, it speaks of incompatibility, an inability to come together because of a particular issue or particular thing that's getting in the way. That particular thing or issue could be what we are hearing in the news, the nuclear program. It could be ballistic missile program. It could be it's things that we have heard about. There may be other things that you and I are not privy to, but they are privy to. And for whatever reason, there's incompatibility. Similar to like we see this often in relationships when maybe a third person is coming in between partnership, or when we have issues that arise that create an untenable situation. And so what this basically suggests is some level of incompatibility, a lack of an inability to cooperate with each other, and to come to, and an inability to get on the same page with each other. So this speaks of division, this speaks of separation, it speaks of incompatibility, it speaks of, parties not getting along. We see this idea being reinforced with the Five of Swords. And so there's definitely a lack of trust that one has for each other, and a feeling as though maybe this is resentment or definitely hostility, but even more so to the point, maybe one feels cheated in the negotiations. One feels as though that the outcome will be unfair, and one views the person as all the parties as not operating perhaps in good faith, perhaps using a overhanded or underhanded approach to engagement. This could be reflected in the way in which the United States is exerting force in the region in terms of the military might, but other efforts that perhaps we are not aware of, but the party feels cheated or feels like the terms are not being negotiated or presented to them in good faith. So the five also represents instability. So that's exactly what we are engaging in. Unstable energy. So it definitely doesn't bode well for the idea that there will be negotiations and that there will be agreed upon terms. It looks like there's no trust, and there's inability to get past an impasse. And one feels like one is using overhanded measures to get what they want. But we must understand that this is it feels like this energy feels like a no-win situation. No one wins. Everyone loses, even though one may feel like they're winning. Not really, no one wins in this particular case. So I see people walking away from negotiations, walking away from conversation, parties going into their corners, doubling down. And then from that, I see the six of swords coming through. All of these are swords. So we know we're dealing with things that create difficulty and may inflict some level of pain. So no one wins, and everyone will feel pain. There's a lack of balance. It seems to be a lack of respect, mutual respect, from what I'm seeing. There's a lot of ego in the way. And then see parties moving away from each other through the six of swords. But this is coming up in a way that feels like um I'm trying to move away, move to smoother waters, but um it doesn't feel like smoother waters. So I can see possibly the United States engaging in conflict with Iran at some point this week or this weekend. Or at least I can see um, the walking away of negotiations, not making any progress with negotiations, an inability to trust each other, and one party feeling cheated or being taken advantage of and fighting against that energy. Let's just ask, how will this resolve itself? Because we see this incompatibility, this inability to work together, because we see this feeling or this idea of being um, cheated or taken advantage of, and one party looking out for their own self-interest, the other not really thinking about the other. So there's a party who feels as though, um, in when we see the Five of Swords, there's usually a big guy with all the swords and the other two walking away in defeat. So there's this one person who feels like, they're the big guy. And, you have the other two parties walking away like, did you have to do me like this? Does it take all that? So there's this feeling of one party feeling perhaps cheated or feeling like they're in a situation that feels very unfair for them. And then you have the other person who says, well, I'm looking out for my own self-interest here. I'm doing what I have to do for me. Um, but then there's a feeling of, does it take all that? Maybe there's also a feeling of greed here, greed, overhandedness. It definitely doesn't bode well for peaceful negotiations. Um, so if I find it difficult, based upon these cards, to believe that these talks that are going to be occurring Friday will produce any fruit that will be of mutual benefit. Mhm. Well, let me just confirm. What I was inquiring was, how does Iran view these talks? How the United States view these talks, and what is the ultimate outcome here? And so the Seven of Wands is coming through, and so I feel like at this particular point, Iran is feeling like they have to stand up for themselves, standing their position, standing their ground. Doesn't feel like they want to really give an inch based upon what I see this, and they say they view this in regards to their own advancement, maybe perhaps their own survival. And so it's like they're vigorously fighting for their position. And they think they have the high ground. From the United States perspective, They may feel as though that they may be offering Iran something substantial, specific financially, because I'm seeing pentacles here. So they're offering something in a tangible way to Iran and viewing this as maybe money, some type of resource. But there's a lack of trust in this, and the United States will feel a sense of loss, it seems like it, a sense of defeat in some type of way. And it's a big, heavy burden for them because it will lead to, I think, a big decision that they have to make. But at the end of the day, I see the Three of Swords coming through again, which represents incompatibility, inability to come together because of this issue. I asked the cards whether or not Mr. Trump will order a strike, and I'm seeing the Eight of Wands. I'll interpret that as things happening quickly, rapidly. Let's interpret this as like bombs flying through the air. And this will definitely create some level of change in the world. So I see this as yes, President Trump may, in fact, order a strike on Iran. And you see the Five of Cups, which represents the fact that it's because we feel as though we have been defeated. Maybe this is in negotiations. But at the end of the day, this strike will create such loss for us as well. I think this loss or this as this feeling of loss is probably due to the fact that there are no good results from the attempted negotiations because one party feels as though they're not getting back equal value. Okay, there is no good faith. There is no balance. That's all these energies suggest, especially when we see the Six of Pentacles. There is no balance. There's no equal exchange here. And then as a result of this attack, we see like doom, to be quite honest. We see the Two of Swords, which represents and it reinforces energy of impasse, okay? Not being able to come to terms, being reflected in the Two of Swords, okay? Swords meaning pain, difficulty, being at a crossroad. And then we see the Tower, destruction, chaos. Suddenly, the world no longer as it was anymore. And then we have judgment. So I'm not optimistic about peace negotiations with Iran and the United States, and I am less confident in the fact that we will not be engaging in conflict with Iran. I'm based upon these cards, they suggest that we won't be able to come to terms. They suggest that the president of the United States will order attacks on Iran, and it will create a lot of chaos and havoc in the region and the world. And the Tower can't get any more clear than this. The destruction. All I can say is that we got to stay prayed up. And at the end of the day, even though we're in this world, we are not of this world. And then we have to remember whose we are. And so I hate that these are the cards that are coming. I pulled the cards earlier this week. It's Monday, and I pulled cards today, which is Thursday. I'm getting the same energetic vibration of inability to meet in the middle, inability to compromise, inability to negotiate, inability to trust, overhanded and underhanded measures. And I'm getting, okay, attack. And as a result of this attack, it will create total chaos. And I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, time is filled with swift transition. None on earth unmoved can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. So we gotta hold to our source, our God, our Maker's unchanging hand. And we ask for its protection, its power, its presence, its peace, as the world moves closer to a very dark place. Well, God be with you, and safe journey to you all. Take good care. Ciao.